Good day, students. I am your IELTS tutor, Jack, and welcome back to another episode of the IELTS Plus English podcast. Now, today's episode is not one I was looking forward to. It's science. Not a strong point for me. It's one that I didn't do very well in school, but I definitely have an interest now. So we'll see how we do. It's definitely one of the tougher subjects. Now, a few announcements before we start. Firstly, my book, the IELTS book that I'm working on, very excited to get that finished. It's going well. There's going to be 40 subjects like the podcast, but I'm going to be giving you vocabulary, tips, phrases, and most importantly, full answer scripts for all topics you can think of. It's going well, and once it's finished, it will be available under my YouTube in a store. So I promise I'll update you on that, but I'm really excited to bring that to you. And of course, if you are in Korea, if you're in Seoul, South Korea, I do have an academy, and I'd love to see you. I teach the IELTS exam, and come and see me in Gangnam, Seoul. Okay, well, I can't delay anymore. We've got to do it. Science, let's have a try. Part 1, question 1. Did you like the science subjects in school? I liked some of the subjects, particularly physics, but to be honest, it really depended on the professor or the teacher. If it was a bad teacher, I really didn't enjoy it. If it was a good teacher, I often had a good time. I remember some subjects I did enjoy, such as biology. We looked at the food chain or human anatomy. These were things I did enjoy. Physics, there was a lot of things related to sort of building and forces and things like that. And I do remember having some enjoyment in school. Okay, that was a little long, by the way. Do try to keep your part 1s to 2 or 3 sentences. I think that was a bit long. Let's do another question. What do you find most interesting about science? I think the thing I find most interesting is just, learning new things, developing, solving problems. We're seeing nowadays with coronavirus, although there's a lot of bad news, there's also a lot of good news in the science community. We're learning a lot. A lot is being invested into scientific research and discoveries. So, I think I find certainly the announcements of new research and new results very interesting. I'm speaking a lot today. I think perhaps that's going to be with the science subject. There's going to be a lot to say. Let's see. Let's do a part 2. Now, part 2, this is the one I fear. So it's describe an area of science that interests you. Just a quick note, and I know I did this last podcast, but slightly different this time. This is a question that I'm looking at and thinking, oh no, what am I going to talk about? I don't know science. I'm not good with science. So keep it simple. Bring it into your area of interest. That's all we want to do. Keep it simple. Bring it into something you're happy to talk about. So that's what I'm going to do now. So 2 minutes starts now. I'd like to tell you about physics. When I was young, I suppose I was about 12 years old. I started attending physics class, and we had a teacher. I remember his name. His name was Mr. Huckstep. And it's totally true. He started teaching us, and he was so passionate. He was quite fiery. I mean, he got quite angry sometimes, but he was so passionate and so hands-on, showing us real scientific experiments, physics-based experiments, that it really gripped me. I suddenly enjoyed the subject. Almost every class we would go in, and he would dictate something about a scientific theory or phenomenon, and we would have to just listen and write down. Doesn't sound very interesting, and it wasn't, but then once we'd finished that, we would do our own experiments, or we'd we'd look at some video or, normally do something very practical. So let me tell you a little more about this class. The one thing that happened that really stood out to me was we're talking about forces and bridges and how bridges can withstand a lot of tension and weight. And in the class, we had to build our own bridge out of straws. And it was such an exciting, wonderful, practical experiment. And we had a bit of a competition with it. And it's always stayed in my mind. And it makes me want to do that with my daughter in the future, with my children in the future. For me personally, he changed my opinion of physics from a boring class to something that's very exciting and practical. Okay, did you see what I did there? Describe an area of science that interests you. Don't start talking about genealogy or something related to vaccines, something that, yes, it's very relevant now, but maybe you don't know much about. Talk about something you are very comfortable with. For me, it was just physics class back in high school. Really easy. Okay, part 3. How important is the knowledge of science in your everyday life? The knowledge of science is very important, I suppose. I mean, of course, science itself is very important in understanding what happens around us. But, I mean, to be honest, when I think back to what I learned throughout high school, I don't apply it every day. I don't walk to work thinking about chemical reactions or seeing the processes that we've learned in biology. So yes, it's very important in our everyday life for understanding things, but for the typical person, I think it's okay not to have that knowledge. Okay, I don't know if that made entire sense. My point is not that you shouldn't study science, but that, kind of like maths formula that you learn in school, if you don't go into that field, it's not going to have many applications. But of course, we must study it, and it opens a lot of opportunities. Okay, part 3. I've defended myself now. Let's go to the next question. Should science subjects be compulsory or voluntary at school? Absolutely compulsory. And the reason I think that is, when you're young, you don't know what you want to do in your life. It's very rare to know what you want to do. So if you give children the option to not do a subject, you're immediately eliminating something at an age where they're not really mature enough to make that decision. I think that kids, right up until, let's say 16, should be exposed to as many subjects as possible so that they can make that decision later on. And yeah, perhaps they will end up in the field of science, and perhaps they will make some remarkable discoveries later in their life. Okay, one more. Part 3. What influence can international cooperation in science bring about? Okay. I think that international cooperation is very important because every country, they do their own experiments, they fund their own programs, and it would be a waste if we weren't sharing that knowledge. I'm sure that does happen. I'm sure that there are countries in the world that guard their breakthroughs, they guard their interesting theories naturally, but it would be wonderful if we were absolutely transparent with knowledge, because the human race as a whole will develop and benefit from it. Good. Well, I did tell you it would be a tough one. I think it was a tough one. Let me know in the comments below. I don't know how you felt about that, but it was a tricky one for me, but I enjoyed it more than I was expecting, to be honest. And if you enjoyed today's topic, if you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, be part of the community, and I will respond as much as I can. Have a fantastic week this week. Study hard as always, and I'll see you next week to discuss a much calmer subject, shopping. See you very soon. Bye-bye.